All right, we are jumping right into a totally fascinating internet moment today. We're looking at the grumpy hedgehog and the apple, a sensational transformation. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a viral moment that captured millions of hearts, basically showcasing an astonishing transformation triggered by something incredibly simple. If you've ever wondered how on earth to communicate with an animal whose primary defense mechanism is literally turning into an impenetrable ball of sharp needles, well, you're in exactly the right place. We are talking about a deeply grumpy hedgehog, a tiny slice of apple, and the absolutely wild sensory science of how animals process safety.
Okay, let's dive into this, because I think we can all relate to this question on some level, right? Have you ever been so incredibly hangry? You know, that perfect storm of hunger and anger that you practically turn into a defensive ball of spikes? For us humans, that usually just means snapping at a coworker or maybe giving your partner the silent treatment. But for a hedgehog, it is quite literal. In the footage that sparked this massive online discussion, we see a pet hedgehog completely curled up, just huffing, puffing, and projecting absolute fury. It's a really great reminder that while we kind of love to project our own human emotions onto animals, their reactions are actually rooted in deep, survival-based instincts.
Moving right along to Section 1, the grumpy hedgehog problem, unpacking the evil villain lore.
So if you ask pretty much any hedgehog owner, they'll tell you straight up, dealing with a defensive, spiky pet is a very real, everyday challenge. When these little guys get stressed out or scared, or honestly if they just wake up on the wrong side of the enclosure, they immediately roll into a tight ball to protect their soft underbellies. And getting them to unroll, oh man, it can feel totally impossible. I absolutely love this quote from the community discussion because it perfectly encapsulates their reality. A user pointed out he's a little fluffball that roams at night with foxes, and his only protection is spikes on his back because everything tries to eat him. That's evil villain lore. It's incredibly funny, but it hits the nail right on the head biologically. These pets aren't just being difficult or mean for the sake of it. They're tiny prey animals. Their entire evolutionary biology is hardwired to assume that anything bigger than them wants to eat them. When they act grumpy, they are actually just executing a highly evolved survival strategy.
We can basically define this as hangry prey animal addition, a state of defensive anger triggered by vulnerability or hunger resulting in a tight, spiky ball. When you take an empty stomach and mix it with that innate, built-in fear of being a prey animal, you get a creature that is highly reactive and completely closed off to social interaction. And for pet owners, this is the ultimate pain point. You know, you just want to love and bond with your pet, but right now your pet is basically a hostile pincushion.
But of course, the internet being the internet, viewers couldn't help but project some wildly entertaining theories onto this particular hedgehog's bad mood. Why so angry? Before we look at the actual solution that calmed this little guy down, let's look at how the community playfully tried to diagnose the source of this immense, spiky rage.
One super popular theory tapped right into classic video game nostalgia. Somebody suggested someone bumped into him and he lost all his gold rings. I mean, you literally can't have a viral hedgehog moment without a nod to Sonic, right? If you've ever played the game, you totally know the absolute frustration of taking a hit and watching all your hard-earned rings just scatter across the screen. Honestly, that's enough to make anyone curl into a furious ball.
Then another commenter added to the lore stating, "Someone ate all of his chili dogs," which is another brilliant reference to Sonic's favorite food from the old animated series. And while these comments are, highly amusing, they actually serve to highlight the contrast in the situation. We are presented with an animal radiating an almost comical level of pure frustration. And that sets the stage perfectly for the dramatic, almost magical intervention that follows.
Which brings us to Section 2, the apple scent solution, a powerful sensory shift. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the owner doesn't try to pry the hedgehog open. They don't poke it or try to force interaction. Instead, they just gently place a freshly sliced piece of apple right next to the hedgehog's nose. And what happens next is just a masterclass in animal behavior and sensory processing. A viewer actually mapped out this exact visual sequence for us. Step 1, the angry ball, maximum defense. Step 2, sniffing the apple. We see the tiny nose twitching, taking in the molecules of the sweet fruit. And step 3, happy and relaxed, literally almost instantly, the spines lower, all that tension just melts away. The hedgehog physically unrolls, transitioning from a state of intense fear and aggression to one of calm curiosity. This clearly illustrates the immediate, almost magical calming power of scent. Because hedgehogs don't have great eyesight, smell is their primary way of interpreting if their environment is safe. So the scent of a high-value safe treat, it completely overrides the instinctual fear response. And as the community pointed out, this brilliantly illustrates a fundamental truth about animal communication. Animals don't hide their feelings. If they love or hate something, you'll know.
Unlike us humans who might, mask our hanger with a polite smile while we're internally seething, animals just give us pure, unfiltered honesty. If they feel threatened, they show it. If they are enticed and comforted by the smell of an apple, they show that immediately too. This visceral reaction is exactly what makes the footage so satisfying to watch. It's a massive, instant release of tension.
All right, Section 3, Happy Signs Identifying a Relaxed Hedgehog.
So, once the apple scent works its magic, how do we actually know the hedgehog is comfortable? Understanding these physical cues is absolutely crucial for anyone looking to handle or bond with defensive pets. It's not just about the absence of hissing, it's about the presence of specific, relaxed behaviors. The community's absolute favorite indicator is what we can call the popping feet phenomenon. As the little guy unrolls to investigate the apple, its tiny little legs suddenly pop out from beneath its belly one by one. It is incredibly endearing. But biologically, it's highly significant. A hedgehog will absolutely not expose its limbs if it still feels under threat. Those popping feet, that's the ultimate white flag. It is the animal physically saying, okay, I'm lowering my defenses, I feel safe enough to walk.
Let's synthesize these observations into some actionable advice. If you're trying to bond with a spiky friend, here is the roadmap. First, look for those popping feet as your green light for interaction. Second, use calming, high-value scents like apple to bridge the communication gap without physical force. Third, follow what one brilliant commenter coined as the show feets get treats rule, basically rewarding them when they choose to unroll and be vulnerable. And finally, always respect their prey instincts. Understand that their grumpiness is just fear, not malice. Moving to Section 4, Patience with Rescues, the real sweethearts under the spikes. So the crucial point here is that all of this funny internet commentary actually points toward a much deeper, more important conversation about animal welfare. When we understand that defensive behavior comes from fear, it completely changes how we approach animals that have been labeled as difficult. Amidst all the jokes about gold rings and chili dogs, a rescue worker left this incredibly powerful insight. I take and rescue hedgehogs, and it is really sad just how mistreated they are as pets. They are incredibly sweet and caring and affectionate animals. And honestly, that reframes this entire explainer. A lot of times, animals that end up in rescues are there precisely because previous owners didn't understand the evil villain lore. They didn't understand those prey instincts. They saw a spiky, grumpy ball and gave up, totally not realizing that with a little patience, and maybe a slice of apple, a deeply affectionate companion was waiting to unroll.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If a simple apple scent can instantly bridge the gap between a highly defensive prey animal and a human, what other nonverbal boundaries might we be missing with our own pets? Whether you have a hedgehog, a rescue dog, or a nervous cat, they are always communicating with us. They're telling us what makes them feel safe and what makes them feel threatened. It is really up to us to learn their language, respect their instincts, and sometimes just know when to offer the metaphorical slice of apple. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep observing the fascinating world around you.